They will tell you that when Africa got its freedom, it fell apart on its own. That the coups, the dictators, the chaos, all of it proves that Africans just could not govern themselves. And when they get to the Congo, they will point to one man and say, "See, he was reckless, a radical. He brought it on himself." That man was Patrice Lumumba. And almost everything you have been told about him is a lie built to hide a crime. Because Lumumba was not killed for failing, he was killed for succeeding. A poor, self-taught postal clerk who became the first leader of the Congo and dared to demand something the West could not allow. Real freedom. Not the polite, managed kind that keeps the minds open and the wealth flowing to Europe. The real thing. And for that, 4 of the most powerful forces on earth lined up to destroy him. Belgium, the United States, the machinery of the United Nations, and traitors inside his own government. They did it within months of his victory. And here is the part that should stop you cold. The country he died trying to free is still bleeding for it today. Every phone in your pocket is tied to it. Stay with me, family, because by the end, you will understand why they had to erase this man and why they are still profiting from his death 60 years later. Let us start with who he actually was, because it explains everything. Patrice Lumumba was born in 1925 in a poor village in the Belgian Congo. And I need you to understand what the Belgian Congo was. It was not a country, it was a business. A place run for one reason: to pull rubber, copper, and diamonds out of the ground and ship the profit to Belgium, while the people who lived there got almost nothing. Education for a black child was barely allowed, but Lumumba was hungry for it. His teachers saw how sharp he was and slipped him books to read on his own. So he taught himself. He taught himself French. He taught himself the languages of his own people. He read everything he could get his hands on. And he climbed, the only way a black man was allowed to climb, into a job as a postal clerk. He became one of the tiny handful of educated Congolese that Belgium tolerated, a group they called the evolved ones. He was supposed to be grateful. He was supposed to stay in his place. Instead, everything changed in a prison cell. Around 1955, Lumumba was accused of stealing money from the post office and thrown in prison. And in that cell, something woke up in him. He stopped seeing himself as one lucky man allowed a little success. He started seeing the whole system for what it was. He walked out of prison a different man, a Pan-Africanist, a nationalist, a man who now believed the Congo belonged to the Congolese, all of it. And here is the first thing they do not want you to notice. When Belgium finally sat down to talk about independence, they needed Lumumba in the room. This so-called criminal, this troublemaker, was already too popular, too powerful to ignore. So they let him out to give their plan the appearance of fairness. They needed his face to sell it. That was their first mistake, because Lumumba had no intention of selling anything. In 1960, his party won the elections, and Patrice Lumumba became the first prime minister of an independent Congo. And that brings us to the day everything turned. June 30th, 1960, Independence Day. Picture the ceremony. The King of Belgium himself is there. It is supposed to be a polite handover, a happy photo. The king stands up and gives a speech praising his ancestor, King Leopold, the very man whose rule worked millions of Congolese to death. He calls colonialism a gift, a civilizing mission, and he expects the Congolese to smile and say, "Thank you." Then Lumumba stood up, and he threw the script in the trash. In a speech broadcast live around the world, he refused the lie to the king's face. He spoke about the forced labor, the beatings, the land stolen, the people humiliated in their own country. He told the truth about what Belgium had done, out loud, on the biggest stage in the world, with the king sitting right there. It was electric, and it was a death sentence. Because in that moment, every power in the West understood something. This man could not be controlled. And this is where the story turns from a triumph into a hunt. But before we get to how they came for him, hold on to that image, because that detail matters more than you know. Real talk for a second, family. YouTube has shut down channels for telling exactly these kinds of stories. So I need you to find us off this platform. Go to blackstories-untold.com, join our mailing list, and make sure we stay connected no matter what they do. Now, Back to the hunt, because the moment Congo was free, the trap that Belgium had built sprang shut. Belgium had set independence up to fail on purpose. They had left almost no Congolese trained to run the government or command the army. And within days, the country started tearing at the seams, exactly as designed. The army mutinied. Congolese soldiers were furious that even after independence, all their commanders were still white Belgians who treated them like dirt. So Lumumba did something bold. He moved fast to promote black officers and put the army in Congolese hands. And that, right there, is the moment the West panicked. Because a leader who would not let foreigners keep control of his army was a leader who might not let them keep control of anything, including the mines. And now you have to understand what was really under the ground in the Congo, because this is the true reason he had to die. The Congo was not just rich, it was one of the most valuable pieces of land on the entire planet. There was a mine in the Congo that held some of the purest uranium ever found. When America built the atomic bombs it dropped on Japan, most of that uranium came from the Congo. Let that sink in. The bombs that ended World War II were powered by Congolese ground. On top of that, the Congo held most of the world's cobalt, huge shares of its copper and industrial diamonds. Whoever controlled the Congo controlled the raw materials of the modern world. So when a Belgian-backed province called Katanga, the richest mining region, suddenly broke away and declared itself a separate country, this was no accident. It was a robbery. Belgium sent its troops right back in to protect it. Lumumba begged the United Nations to help him kick the Belgians out and hold his country together. And the UN, led by men who answered to Western powers, refused. They sent troops, then stood aside and let the Congo be carved up. So Lumumba, cornered and betrayed, did the one thing guaranteed to seal his fate. He asked the Soviet Union for help. Now remember, this was the Cold War. To the United States, a black leader reaching out to the Soviets over his own stolen land was not a desperate man asking for help. It was a threat that had to be eliminated. And I mean that literally. Here is what is not a rumor. Here is what the United States government itself later admitted on the record. President Eisenhower personally gave the order to have Patrice Lumumba killed. The CIA sent one of its top scientists with a kit of poison designed to give Lumumba a deadly disease and make it look natural. The poison was real. The plan was real. The station chief in the Congo just kept stalling and eventually threw the poison into the river. But understand what that means. The most powerful nation on Earth had officially decided that this self-taught postal clerk was so dangerous he needed to be wiped off the planet. And Belgium was running its own plan to kill him at the same time. They did not need the poison in the end. They found a colder way. This is the climax of the whole betrayal, and it is where you see the machine work. They did not send an American or a Belgian to pull the trigger. That would have left fingerprints. Instead, they arranged for Lumumba to be destroyed by his own. With CIA money and encouragement, his rivals inside the government, including a young officer named Mobutu, pushed him out of power and placed him under house arrest. Lumumba escaped and tried to reach the region where his supporters were strong. He was captured on the way. And then came the final, calculated cruelty. They put him on a plane and flew him straight to Katanga, the one place on Earth run by his most bitter enemies. They delivered him to the people most likely to kill him, on purpose, so that Belgium and the CIA would never have to. On January 17, 1961, Patrice Lumumba and two of his allies were beaten, then stood against a tree and shot by a firing squad. And the men who commanded that firing squad, the men who oversaw his final moments, were Belgian officers. He was 35 years old. He had led his country for less than 3 months. But they were not done, because they were terrified of him even in death. They knew that a grave would become a shrine. So they went back, dug up the bodies, cut them apart, and dissolved them in acid until almost nothing was left. Almost. One single tooth survived, taken as a trophy by a Belgian policeman. That tooth was not returned to Lumumba's family until the year 2022. Think about that. They tried to erase him so completely that his children waited 60 years just to bury a tooth. They told the world he had escaped and been killed by angry villagers. Nobody believed it. Within a month, the truth leaked and people rose up in fury. There were protests at Belgian and American embassies. There was uproar inside the United Nations itself. The world knew a great man had been slaughtered. And this is where everything connects, family. Because his killing was not the end of the story. It was the beginning of a blueprint. Remember that young officer Mobutu, the one they used to push Lumumba aside? The West put him in charge, and Mobutu ruled the Congo with an iron fist for over 30 years. He robbed the country blind, becoming one of the richest men in the world while his people starved. And the West protected him the entire time because he kept the mines open and kept the Congo on their side. That was the trade. They killed the man who wanted the Congo to belong to the Congolese, and they replaced him with a man who would sell it back to them. And here is the grand truth this whole story was built to show you. The wealth that got Lumumba killed is the same wealth being ripped out of the Congo right now, today. That country holds the majority of the world's cobalt and a huge share of its coltan, the minerals that power your phone, your laptop, the electric car they tell you is saving the planet. And the Congo is still one of the poorest nations on Earth. Armed groups fight over those minerals. Children dig for them by hand. Foreign companies and corrupt officials haul the wealth away, while the people who live on top of the richest ground in the world get almost nothing. Does that sound familiar? It is the exact same crime Lumumba died trying to stop. Take the wealth, leave the people with nothing. The only thing that changed is the decade and the product. That is why they killed him. Not because he was dangerous to the Congo, because he was dangerous to the theft. Patrice Lumumba became a martyr for the whole continent. Freedom fighters from South Africa to the Caribbean spoke his name for generations. They wanted you to remember him as a reckless radical who failed. Remember him instead as what he really was, a man who saw the trap clearly, who told the truth to a king, and who was killed by the most powerful nations on earth precisely because he was right. He was not too dangerous to his people. He was too honest for their empire. This was Black Stories Untold, and as always, thanks for watching. If you want more stories like this, click the video on your screen right now.